on a second stream.
We have returned. Streamlabs crashed. I think it was Streamlabs who crashed anyways. But we are back again. Okay, that is inconvenient, but we will learn to live with it. What I do need to do, however, is I need to find that goddamn window so it saves the bloody Superchats. There we are. Okay, right. Where were we, Vee, before everything went to hell in a handbasket?
We were going to talk about Skullgirls.
Skullgirls. Oh, God, that one.
Do you know about Skullgirls?
I know. They started censoring it for shits and giggles.
No. But like, do you know how the game was created?
Vaguely. You can tell me about it.
So the game was created by the community. It was a crowdfunding project, which it banked on the fact that it's hand-drawn animation. And it was the memes and the fan service that actually pushed it. Because, again, you have this AAA gaming, which sanitizes everything. And here you have, like, this wholesome game, which is not pornographic. Because for 10 years, it went on all the major platforms. It went on YouTube, Twitch, right? Like, no one had a problem with it. And you know how censorious YouTube is. And for all this time, there's no issues, right? Now, the developers either end up quitting or they're being replaced by more progressive and forward-thinking individuals.
One of them was also accused of sexual harassment.
Yeah.
And,
the whole...
Nobody could figure out if it was real or not, and he was eventually yeeted, and the studio was reformed. So the original development team is not there anymore.
Yes, and what really enrages people is that the new development team has the audacity to say, "Go make your own," and it's like, well, motherfucker, this is literally made by the community.
This was our own thing, yeah.
This was our own, yeah. So they decide to censor, like, the I think like the ADL and the SPLC are raging right now because they're not getting any more donations because the hatred in the world has gone down dramatically. Because Skullgirls has censored their depictions of Nazism, which is a red armband with an umbrella. So they censored that. They censored what they considered to be hypersexualized, even though, again, like, the game was on Twitch and YouTube and all the other places. And, the very idea that you can buy something and 10 years after the fact, the company can change what you have bought, is something that never happened throughout human history, right? Like, imagine you buy a book and you have it in your library, but then, like, the author can change the contents of the book. And no matter, like, what they change, like, the very fact that, you don't get to pick to revert to the initial changes is why, like, a lot of people are upset.
Yep.
And you're not going to get refunds now, obviously. People aren't upset about the lewd depictions because, like, no one was even playing the game. They're upset about the principle. It's like, but what fucking right do you have to take over, something that I owned and change it because of your twat ideology? Like, the thing is, like, most people do not agree with your ideology, which is why they funded the game in the first place. And second of all, fuck you, right? So like, they pretend on Twitter that they don't understand why gamers are upset. And you have a lot of furries and cam girls and, all the prestigious members of our society mocking gamers for being, oh, well, you're into porn. It's like, well, I'm sorry, if I want porn, I go on Twitch, I go on OnlyFans, I have Drag Kids Story Hour, like, there's a lot of options for porn, but this was a game that I founded, and, I just do not like this mentality that you're insinuating that the old developers were evil because they had, like, the red armband with an umbrella. Ooh.
Well, there's actually a very interesting little thing around this, isn't there? Because I've been touching upon it a fair bit recently when it comes to the uglification of characters in video gaming. I did a video on this. I think it was the new face of beauty. I did a video on that where Dove has launched a whole campaign. That's an incredibly unflattering picture of myself. Whole campaign to introduce real beauty in video gaming. And by real beauty, they mean fat, ugly, and generally disgusting people, And the reason
have,
they can do
go on.
this is because this is their values. Like, this is their identity of beauty. They are basically saying to you, no, I don't care about what you like. This is about what I like.
The thing is, okay, and this is the arguments that I want to educate your chat. I'm educating. Okay. When they say, if you want porn, go watch porn, you should say, okay, so if you like Call of Duty and the developers would remove all the guns because they don't want violence in the game, and when you complain, would it be accurate for me to say, if you want violence, go fight in Ukraine?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would also just simply say, yeah, I want porn.
Well, no, because then it's like, oh, well, but no,
Well,
like,
that's
thing
the
is, like,
thing, isn't it? Because who are the people? Like, you actually did excellently when you were revealing this. Every time somebody went like, "Dude, you just like porn," you looked at their profile, and it was just nothing but furry diaper porn. Because it's
football
not
players,
about
for some
porn.
fucking reason. By the way, for some reason, there's a new group that established itself recently. People who, when I go on their timeline, just football shit. And they're, like, laughing because you're. At least I get them, but, like, dude, you like watching 13 grown men chasing after a ball. Like, shut the fuck up with other people's hobbies.
Well,
Like, I don't pick about Travis.
it goes back to what we talked about previously, the social perception of things. Like, you gotta remember, the current day leftist movement is the same movement that says, yes, it is entirely fine for a naked old man to shake his ass at children at a pride parade. That is not only acceptable, that is empowering. But you asking for a woman with large breasts in a video game is disgusting and objectifying.
Yeah. Literally. And I get another argument, right? Imagine you're a fan of Need for Speed, right? You like to watch all these cool racing cars and, the Porsche and the Lamborghinis. And then they make a new Need for Speed. And they have, like, in the commercial, a Trabant. Like a really shitty car. Maybe they don't even have car. Maybe it's a bicycle now, right? And when the guy pedals, like, the bicycle wobbles. And when you say, like, this is not the Need for Speed that I like, right? Like, I like high-speed car chases, exotic cars, and I want to see the cops, right, doing the illegal street racing. And they would be like, no. First of all, like, these are just means of transportation. The bike is also a means of transportation, so you should stop complaining. You only complain because you like criminal activity. You like to see illegal street racings. No, this is the new Need for Speed, right? And the Trabant is also a car. It's like the car that I have in my backyard. It's called representation. Like, I can't feel represented if I see a Lamborghini in the video game. It needs to be a car like my own, which is dirty, unkept, not being taken to the mechanic, right? And deep inside, I feel ashamed of my car. Like, this is the reality. I feel ashamed of my car. However, if every single video game and every single movie represents my car, then maybe society will not shame me for having a car that I never take to the mechanic and I never wash. I think this is literally what it's about.
Well, it is about authority, is what I would say. It is about saying, my fetish good, my fetish laudable, my fetish should be celebrated with parades, your fetish bad, your fetish evil, your fetish should be shamed. Like, Dev did a good video on it actually the other day, summarizing and stealing most of my points. Dev, you fat little fucking shit. But it is about power, because they are telling you straight up, when the dude whose entire profile is full of half-naked furries say, "Lol, dude, stop thinking about porn," he's not judging you based on the porn, because he himself is fully immersed in it. It is because you are lesser than him in societal stature. Your fetish is societally unacceptable. It's like going back 20 years and going into a church and going like, yes, I quite like half-naked furries, actually. You too would have been judged.
Yes, I think it has to do with religious significations, despite the fact that...
Not religious, authoritative.
Yes, no, but, like, what I'm saying is that... we say it as in a joke that woke people are like a religion, but I do believe that it has certain elements of religion where it is blasphemy, like you're blaspheming. if you go against Ray, or if it's kind of like saying that maybe we as a society should be more sinful. It's what you're saying. And they go up on that, but like it's interesting because okay, today I remade the post. I got 3 billion views. The worst response that I got was someone calling me a degenerate, porn obsessed person, right? And when I go to their timeline, they have lesbian underage children kissing. Like it was from some shit from a cartoon or something, right? But like these are the people criticizing me.
Yeah. No, unironically,
And
because they are brainlets. Ironically, they're brainlets. They don't understand their own position or what they're arguing for. Because again, I do think that Dev has a point here where we should simply just say, yeah. That's like, oh, you like porn? Yeah. Got a problem with it? It's like, fuck off. The Chad yes might actually be the answer to this, because it is a simple, pure abuse of power. It is my fetish good, your fetish bad.
yes.
God, well, this is taking a while. We have finally arrived at the third decision. The diversity demissions at colleges. The defeat of affirmative action as well. And they are now worrying that this is only the first step. Because, of course, Vee, if you can say that colleges aren't allowed to accept people based on race, what is the argument for diversity and inclusion initiatives for companies?
You know what's interesting? I actually know. Romania has it. It's called poverty. But the problem is that poverty doesn't discriminate, right? So, like, this is how it works in my country. Now, unfortunately, we do have certain things based on ethnicity, and they're incredibly corrupt. Like, if you are a person of that ethnicity and you want to get in, you have to either know the right people or pay the right amount. Okay, so this is like our version of identity politics, which is corrupt as fuck. But you also have the poverty level. So if for example, you get really good grades in school, but let's say your parents passed away or you're from a very poor family, as long as you get the good grades, then you can get like this scholarship, and you can get into the university, and you can stay there as long as you keep getting good grades. So and this motivates people to actually study really hard. At my university, so at med school, the most top students were actually the ones that came from impoverished families, because the ones from rich families, they could go clubbing, they could relax a little bit, because they were like, well, if I fail the year, like mommy and daddy will keep paying. But the poor ones, like, they knew that is their only chance out of poverty. Like they had to get good grades, because otherwise they would end up not being able to pay. So I think it's a great system. I don't see America having it, right? Because then you'd have like the actual hillbilly going to a university, and that's the last thing that they want.
Mm-hmm. But again, like in corporations too, because the equal here is, if it is now illegal to get people of certain races advantages for getting into college, then that would also seemingly mean that ESG schools or diversity initiatives are now also illegal, because you're not allowed to hire people based on the color of their skin. And the reason why companies were doing so was because of diversity, and because there was no political will to prosecute these companies. Now, I will say one thing. There is one difference here, in that it was much easier to prove it in the case of Harvard. Because the students who were suing the school could go, okay, this is my score on my tests. This is a guy who got in's score on his tests. I got a higher score, why didn't I get in? And that is a provable thing. But when you apply it to company, it is very difficult to quantify, what your score was.
Yes. But the thing is, there was a TikTok video, like with one of the it was a white guy, and he had like one of the top, I think it was like 5% scores. And he applied to various universities, all of them declined him. And it was because of the skin color. Because the moment he applied and pretended to be a different person, like a woman of color, immediately it was like, like approved, approved, approved. So, obviously, incredibly unfair. But the thing with companies, I don't really think they care about diversity. Like the reason you hire a diversity officer is for the ideology, right? Like you hire an apparatchik, and you do it so you can get those ESG scores. You do not really care like how the color of the people working at your company and that type of thing.
You might not care, but you still hire based on skin color because of the ESG score. That's the thing. And again, companies have been able to get away with this because it was a little bit of, well, not actually really that much of a legal gray area, but because there wasn't the interest to call people out on what is criminal activity. But now that there is a precedent for this, well, the Daily Wire here is beginning to say that companies are starting to fear that they might be getting sued for this as well. Because it absolutely would be a thing you could sue them for. If your company has a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, and you don't get hired, you could then sue them and go like, okay, why didn't you hire me? And you could bring up the fact that they have a program that specifically weights race as evidence in your favor. The question is whether or not that is evidence enough.
Yeah. It's interesting that they actually hid behind the Asians to make this argument. Because, if universities didn't discriminate against Asians, I don't know if this would even pass.
Probably not, but Asians are white passing now. Because this was obviously about Harvard, was one of the schools that got slapped down with the ban on affirmative action. So what kind of college or university is Harvard? Well, they made a post a couple of years ago bragging about having very high acceptance for black students. African American or black students made up 18% of the admitted class, a significant increase from 14.8% of the admitted students from the previous class. So blacks are about, 7% of the US population. So that would mean that they are overrepresented by over 2 times in Harvard admissions. That's unusual.
Yes.
And if we look at their actual numbers,
you know what I think, because this is also my opinion. It's a lot easier for universities to play on the grievances of black people to manipulate them into being obedient towards the professors.
Yes, and they are if you have the agenda to create social justice in schools, you want to get people who are naturally vulnerable to it. And if you can tell a person, "Oh, you're the victim of this. You're the victim. You should be angry." That is a much easier convert. It is literally the same as when the Nazis went to beer halls and stuff and went like, "You ex-soldiers, you're the ones who were damaged by this."
Yeah.
It's also because they can look at Harvard and they go like, okay, but can you prove that Harvard has a preference for people of a certain race? Yes, because Harvard writes articles like this on their official page going, embracing our differences, diversity and access. We stand by BLM, etc. You can absolutely prove that they have a bias in favor of minority groups.
It's not like the problem isn't like having a bias for minority groups. It's when you basically tell a person that should have gotten it. Well, you don't get it because you were born wrong. You lack the pedigree. You're not of the identity, nobility, like that type of thing.
That is the problem with the bias, though. Like when you advantage one group over another, you obviously create victims because you are saying like, oh, you're black, you get in. Oh, you're white, no, you stay out. Like this is obvious discrimination.
Yes.
We can also look at Harvard's numbers for some other interesting little tidbits. So the majority of students at Harvard are women. So when... This is an old question, Vee. When do we reach equity? When are women equal to men? How many more percentage of women need there be in the uppermost echelon of education before we are equal?
Well, that's the thing. They realize that they reach percentage. But they kept the things going.
Yeah. It's like, okay, now we've got 50-50. Let's keep going.
This is literally why they went with equity, because it used to be about equality. And most people are willing to accept equality. Basically, they play on the fact it's like, oh, well, let's be treated under the law, right? Let's be equal. But then they're like, no, like let's actually equalize people, which is where I disagree. But anyway, most people are fair with equal treatment, right? But when you actually get equal treatment and their interest group want more, that's when they move to equity.
Yes.
Which basically means that you need to suffer for the sins of your fathers, basically, right?
Yes.
And that's, you know, like, okay, well, we reach 50-50 representation, but keep going, because, well, now
because
it's
still not equity. We might be equal, but we're not equitable.
Yeah, and equitable can mean anything. It can be like literally 100% women.
Yes.
Right? So like it just, as long as like men don't have like more, then it's fine.
And we can finally then go to the race ethnicity at Harvard. So whites make up 45.4%, and that is white as in whites and Hispanics, mind you, because America has a very weird definition for white people, which include people from Egypt, amongst other things. So this 45% isn't even 45% of what you and I would consider a white person. It is white people plus Hispanic people who identify as white, plus some African nations.
But you know what's interesting, actually, is that they notice that some people start lying on the application about their race, and that really pissed them off.
Yeah, because a bunch of them were revealed to be lying. Like, I believe there was obviously Pocahontas, the perfect example. But there was also a graduate of, I think it was Harvard, who had claimed to be black. And it came out later that she wasn't black. She just literally had curly hair.
Oh, yeah, no, but there were like university professors and shit that literally like, which is, you know what's fascinating? We have transgenderism, and they justify that as, well, you know, you have intersex, which, like, so there's more than two sexes, because you have XX and XY, so you have, like, these genetic abnormalities, but, like, oh, are you saying that those are the valid sex? You got intersex. But when it comes to ethnicity, it's much more likely that you have an ancestor that wasn't white at one point down your family tree. And without that ancestor, you wouldn't exist, right? So in the medical terms, we do not really talk about ethnicity. We talk about ancestry. And when you do a person's ancestry tree, you notice that it's, you know, like you're Norwegian, but maybe you have some blood from Greece at one point, or, you know, because people did travel throughout history. So like the idea that a person, you know, which does have like, let's say, one drop of Pocahontas, like Elizabeth Warren, you know, like if she were to identify as an Indian just because of this rule, everyone would laugh at her. The tribes are laughing at her, right? But for some reason, interracialism isn't allowed, but transgenderism is. So you're not allowed to switch genders, but you're not allowed to switch your race. Like, that is something fixed, which shows how important it is for their ideology.
Yes. In fact, I looked it up. So this is the woman who claimed to be black. She became a university professor. And she apparently did so on the back of being a black woman. That is also the statistic. This is from a couple of years ago. That 34%, so over a third, of white college students lied about their race to improve their admissions odds. Now, that also means that this is a cultural phenomenon that is generally recognized. If a third of the population applying for colleges know to lie about their race, this isn't a secret. This is somebody everybody knows. This is how it works. And if you want to get in, you shouldn't be white. Like, everyone knows that whites are at the bottom of the pecking order, and you shouldn't be it. You are born wrong if you are.
Professor, which flat out said it's like, well, it's fine to discriminate against them because no one has the white man's back anymore.
Yep.
Like, they're flat out open about it. You know, like in public, they would recognize it. They will say, oh, well, whites hold all the institutional power, blah, 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 blah. But in reality, you know, and by the way, like, this is the major flaw of woke ideology is the assumption that power is shared by groups and not by individuals. Like, just because Mark Zuckerberg has power doesn't mean he shares it with me, right? Elon Musk has power doesn't mean he shares it with me. And they admit this with Barack Obama, right? Like, Barack Obama is the president of US, but that doesn't mean that black people have. So, like, the reality is that power belongs to the individual, is shared by to his immediate friends and family. Like, obviously, Michelle Obama has a lot of power, not because she did anything, but because she's married with Barack Obama. But the entire woke ideology is based around the concept of power belongs to groups.
Because it's inherently collectivist. And it's also because it is automatically hypocritical. That's why they can go, oh, Mark Zuckerberg exists, therefore you have white privilege. But Barack Obama's like, oh, he doesn't improve the position of black people just because we had one black president, and so on. It is categoric. The left lies on everything they can. And if we return to the Harvard University racial spread again, so Asians overrepresented, 17.9%, so 18%, out of a population of America of, what was it? I think, let me see here, 6%, so massively overrepresented. Whites, massively underrepresented, as they make up some 70% of the American populace. And then you need to add in the people who are white but apparently come from Spain, etc., too. And in reality, like, this is not representative of anything. If this was to be representative, if Harvard admissions was to be directly representative of the population, 75% of this circle would be whites. Blacks would be a 13% slice. Asians would be a 6% slice, etc. But that's the problem. Real world is not representative of statistics, and it never can be. And pursuing that will inherently be racist.
To mention, it assumes that like 100% of people want to do that particular task. You know, so like, if I open a job, obviously it's the people in my neighborhood that are going to apply for it, right? Like, the people who are 50 cities away probably aren't interested in working for me, but that doesn't mean I discriminate against them. That simply means, like, they will not show up.
Mm-hmm. They're not there.
It's interesting because in London, there was an article which I made fun of, complaining that there aren't enough women plumbers, and the reason they decided that there aren't enough women plumbers is because of commercial advertisement and stigma. And I was like, okay, so, like, what do you mean by stigma? Well, they mean that if they see a female plumber, they will assume that she lives there and she's not the actual plumber. And I'm like, okay, well, how many female plumbers are there in the UK? And I look it up, and it's like less than 2%. And I'm like, well, that's not stigma. That's just correct assessment of the situation. Yeah. And not to mention, you know, like, if I see a female plumber and I'm like, you know, do you live here? And she's like, no, I'm a plumber. Like, that doesn't mean that I'm initially going to be like, no way. You know, that is impossible. It changes my worldview. What can I make of this? Like, no, you're just going to go like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Why did you want to become a plumber? You know, like, that's pretty much it. But the reality is, like, women don't want to become plumbers for, first of all, like what I said, is the social status, right? Like, it's, despite the fact that it's a very essential job, it's not going to be treated the same like if you're a lawyer, like prestigious, or a gender studies master. And secondly, it's a job that's very dirty, you know? Like, not a lot of people have what it takes to clean a toilet or to unclog a sink.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this, of course, then comes back to why did they do it? Well, they're actually telling us straight up. Harvard then says, in response to the ruling, that it will still consider race during admission processes. Because they don't care if it's illegal. They don't care if they're not supposed to do it. They don't care if there's a problem with it.
Well,
they're doing it out of
political
means.
Yeah. If that's the case, what do they do when they get sued?
Well, they're just going to pretend to not do it. That's what. Because they're straight up saying it. Like, they're going to ask for more essays talking about the person's background. So they can say, oh, we didn't pick them because of their race. We picked them because of their essay. Which simply says, over 5 pages in massive capital letters, I am black.
Yeah, but, like, imagine if that happens, that when you sue them, you show what they just said.
Yeah,
And
the
you use
problem
it in court
is,
against.
then you'll have to go through another 10-year court circle with all of this. So, and the thing is, they don't care if they get sued because their ideology is more important. It's the same with the people who are like, oh, I'm just not going to repay my student debt. These people don't live in the real world, and you're going to have to hit them awfully hard before they start to think, oh, wow, the boot is real.
No, you know what I think needs to happen is that the university professor themselves have to pay, right?
Yeah.
Because if the university has to pay, that no one cares, right? But when it's coming from the pockets of the actual professor, oof.
Then they might start wondering. A few more super chats before YouTube decides to yeet all of them into the sea, presumably. Sandoom says, in California, 100,000 will probably get you a shed, if you're lucky. Rashimotaro says, Dev's take on Trump's case was full of bad info. Well, he's Dev. He's fat and dumb. We all recognize this. But he's still our friend. Vulture1066 says, Reform 94 was a problem in Norway. Ah, yes, we did have a brief period of trying communism here. It didn't really work very well, and it's still an issue to this day. But generally, the education system, that's what Reform 94 refers to, incidentally, I think. The education system in its entirety is simply worthless for the task it is intended to do. The task of the education system is to create working adults, and it fails at that at every single level.
I don't even think like the left believes it's intended to create functioning adults anymore.
Well, the leftist of the opinion it's intended to create activists.
Yes, like literally, and to give you a diploma. Mm-hmm. But you know, like during the Kavanaugh things, I remember how the teachers were instigating the students, like teaching them to chant and being like, and the students are like, yeah. And then they send them in front of the court hearings. You know, apparently, just like in the January 6th insurrection, they broke into the Capitol building and they got arrested by cops. Imagine being a parent and you spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars for your little child to get arrested and have a criminal record.
Mm-hmm. At least they didn't get on television or be called insurrectionists, so that's something.
Yeah.
Outrage D says, I'm from a small village of 800 people in New Mexico, and I was treated like a bumpkin when I went to college to study history. Classism is alive and well in America, and it's mostly geared at rural Americans as they view as irrelevant at best or obstacles. Oh, absolutely.
I have lost.
It is the rule of the cities. Sonothium15 says, Arch, notice how they say trans rights are human rights, but not the other way. It implies that trans have rights greater than human rights. Yes, because they do. They literally do. They have special privileges under the law. If you attack a white person, that's assault. If you attack a trans person, that's an assault and a hate crime. Lord Comes as Spartan says, eventually you have to call a bundle of sticks a bundle of sticks. Oh, spicy. Shout out to Yin Yang has been a member for 5 months. Thank you very much for your long-term support, sir. I seriously doubt it was a real loophole. The sovereign citizens are delusional when it comes to the law. Probably.
I have lost. Shit.
Mark99 says, it is sad how right you guys are. Christianity is all about being nice to your enemies. Unfortunately, the safe edge laws have taken advantage of it. Well, yeah, it demonstrates the weakness of Christianity.
The thing with Christianity is like this, right? If you live in a country where everyone is a Christian, and the whole idea is that if you slap someone, you need to turn the other cheek and shit. It's like the person doing the slapping is going to burn in hell, right? So like the person doing the slapping is aware that what he's doing is sinful, and while he can get away with it in this life, eventually he meets the Lord, and the Lord punishes him for his behavior in this life, right? So it creates like this idea that people should behave because there is an afterlife and a judgment. But when you have a country where not everyone is a Christian, and you have people that not only do not believe but mock and attack Christians, yeah, the Christians don't have any defense.
It's also the thing that Christianity's entire selling point is that it's a nice religion. And it is. It is by far the most civilized and modern religion out of all of the ones currently available.
Well, I think Buddhism compares as well.
Well, you filthy bastard. You'll be the first to burn. But
No, but I'm saying it's like, yeah, I do agree with you, but like there are also other religions that, you know.
it also means that being a pacifist is only possible when everyone else accepts that pacifism is a virtue. When somebody emerges, like the communists, and sees you, oh, I'm not going to defend myself, then he's going to walk into your house and he's going to take your shit.
You know, it's interesting because like the Marxists, they also have like at least the Marxists we create also have like Christian virtues in them. This is why when they say like some reminiscence of Christian virtues is what I mean, because they will say, oh, you know, we don't need the police, we can have like psychologists, and you know, we can educate people. And it's like, okay, so in this situation where you have like the father comes home drunk, beats up the wife, and then, you know, like takes the kid in the room and starts beating him as well, and the wife calls the psychologist, like what is the psychologist going to do in that fucked up situation? Like, are they going to just lecture the guy through the door? Maybe he's even asleep drunk at that point. But an even better one, it's like, what do you do when you have a person that literally doesn't care about the law? Like, they just don't give a fuck. Like, they know what they are doing is illegal. They are aware that what they are doing is hurting people, but they just don't care. Like, are you going to get a psychologist to Don Corleone? And you're going to, you know, it's wrong to shake down businesses. Like, I know it's profitable for you and your family, but like, think about the community.
Think about the community, Don Leon.
Yeah.
Or, like, okay, here's the thing. You hire some civilians, huh? You're going to talk to people. You're going to explain to them why what they're doing is wrong. All right, let's send them to France right now. Which is, of course, the perfect example of what happens if you don't de-wokeify your country soon enough. Let's see your psychologist face off against about 50 angry foreigners burning cars, or standing whilst people are firing fireworks at you. Or, as we have seen recently, and this was probably the most ridiculous thing as well, it's become a bit of a sport in France to film riots and film ridiculous acts of violence. And Sargon in the Super Secret Conspiracy chat just today posted a video about rioters who'd cut off a man's hands. He was lying on the ground bleeding, and obviously we can't show this, and they were just laughing at him. It was just funny.
To be honest, there were people saying that may have been from a traffic accident, but it's hard to confirm.
Well, there's also we also have something else that's definitely not a traffic accident. This is a tweet showing people with what appears to be Kalashnikovs in the streets.
Oh, yes.
Just firing into the air wildly.
Yes. Apparently Americans say you're not supposed to do that. But many countries do.
Many countries do. It's considered celebratory, in fact.
Yes.
It is celebratory gunfire.
I think even Americans do, like when they go to like one of those military funerals, and they go, but they fire in the air. Like, yeah. I think that's, yeah.
Yes, this is celebratory gunfire. It is different from regular gunfire in that this is festive.
Yes, but in many other places, you know, sometimes it's Allah Akbar, other times it's other chants, but it's like, put it in the air and go.
Yes.
It's like,
and of course, many
much
people.
Much to the dismay and horror of the Americans.
Many people have been asking on Twitter, where are all these guns coming from? Because surely, you know, having firearms in France is illegal. So where do the criminals get all of their goddamn assault rifles from? Who knows?
You know, it's interesting because I remember, like, they did actually a search of a mosque at one point, and this was horrible. You know, it's like the sanctity of religion. It's like the separation between church and state. They found like 300 assault rifles and shit in that mosque.
Because it turns out
but that was like years ago, yeah.
Turns out that criminals don't actually necessarily care about the law, and if they feel like they want to arm themselves, well, they're gonna arm themselves.
It's more like criminals are aware of the law in order to know how to not get punished. It's like, okay, well, if the government can't search mosques because there's a separation between church and state, then where do we hire the guns? Oh, well, the mosques.
Where do we hide all of them, indeed?
I think they became holy weapons. Like, do they do holy damage if they stay in the mosque for a while?
I think so, yes.
Me
the question
too.
then is whether or not the French are unholy.
No, but like I think that if there's going to be like a 28 days later zombie apocalypse, those weapons may do more damage against the undead because they've been sanctified.
And of course, this is nothing new for France. This has been going on for years. Years and years and years and years. Like, France has been on fire now for absolute ages. And it is, unironically, due to unlimited tolerance. France was like, hey, world, come over here. Everyone, absolutely everyone. And so the world did. And now France is on fire. And it has been on fire for the last, 2 or 3 years at this point. There are constant riots in France. These are merely some recent ones and some worse than usual ones.
To be honest, the previous riots were different than this. These ones are specifically targeted at businesses and looting, right?
Oh.
And you kind of notice the overwhelming majority of youth. Of gamers, as Macron puts it. Did you know that?
Ah, yes. Macron did do a little post.
Yeah, it's the Forspoken enthusiasts. I think people played Forspoken way too much, and now they're in France protesting. Gamers rise up, according to Macron.
Yep.
But this one is different in the fact that it's setting fire to police stations, and the previous ones, may have, but not at this level. And they're targeting businesses. That's the thing.
It's also the scale and the brazen nature of it.
Yes.
There was this tweet here, which is showing there's emoji on screen with the brown muscles. People are laughing at this as a protester apparently chases a police officer shooting fireworks at his back. This is ridiculous. This is beyond lawless at that point.
Well, it's interesting because they tried this shit. It's expanding now. So I understand it's in Brussels and it's going to London. But I think Britain shut it down because they have police officers. Meanwhile, the French have defunded their police, not as a political talking point, but as a pragmatic reality. They didn't care about their cops that much. So the cops aren't doing their job. And I think we talked about it. They got the gendarmerie out, which is kind of the militarized police. The Americans don't have an equivalent because their police is militarized. But I think even they were unable to do much.
Uh-huh.
And the reason is that, if you try this shit in Russia, the police isn't going to fuck around. If you try this shit in China, same thing. China, is really great at the way they perfected brutality to the point where they don't have to be brutal. They will just find out who the instigator and the leaders are and vanish them in the middle of the night. They will shut down the communication of the protesters. They will find out what apps they're using to talk, and they will shut those down. And then they don't have to do another Tiananmen Square because it doesn't look good on cameras.
And it's because you've managed to put the fear of God into them. Whereas in these cases... Okay, let me send this one. This one's probably the most retarded and absurd one of them all. So this is supposedly of rioters in France setting an elementary school on fire using a gasoline canister. And I would like to point out, look on the screen. His screen name is massive there. They tag these videos and upload them to their own social media. They have no fear of the police. They have no fear of consequences. They have no fear of repercussions whatsoever. This is their YouTube content. Ironically, this is what they do for clicks.
What I find fascinating is that in Canada, the truckers immediately have their bank accounts shut down, and I'm pretty sure that the anti-COVID protesters in France were immediately dealt with. So we live in a world where all of your social media is visible to the government. You have no privacy almost whatsoever, and for some reason, this thing is still allowed to exist.
Yeah,
I guarantee you, if I was Macron, I would be any person that's charged for any of this will not be eligible for welfare. Can you imagine? You just say that. It's if you are caught doing any of this thing, if you have any form of welfare from the government, for poverty, for whatever, just gone. You're not allowed anymore. I think like a lot of people would go back into their homes.
I have lost.
Maybe.
Shit.
What if they would shut down your bank account, like they did to the trucker protests in Canada?
They dealt with the
like,
truckers
okay,
a hell of a lot
question.
harsher
Fire
than
is
they're
the answer.
dealing with these rioters.
Yeah,
I wonder
different
why.
countries, though. I know. Well, different countries. That's I understand the criticism, but still.
Reapinol says, we need old Christians back. I had a great grandpa who was a preacher who would smack you with the Bible for mocking his faith like they do now. Creek Guardsman 181 says, it's very depressing watching the home that I and my brothers bled for descend into debauchery and anarchy and being marked enemy for speaking against it. It is. Herbert Kenumera says, hello, Arch. I have returned from Moonrune Land. You were right. I loved it. Akihabara was positively magical. It is, isn't it? It's a place where you get to geek out still. Thaddeus Omegon says, they are slowly turning against Muslims since they protest with Christians against the Rainbow Mafia propaganda in schools. That is true. The Muslims are pretty much our leading edge right now. James Warren says, hey Arch, what do you think of Nigel Farage's bank account being cancelled? I haven't heard of that. Let's...
Yes, he, for no reason, like they won't give a reason, which means that they know it's bullshit, but they don't want to be sued. Shut down his bank account, and apparently he believes he is a politically exposed person. This is something that the European Union has coined. And at the beginning, it was like someone who gets money from like a foreign entity, right? So like you're a politician and you're getting money from Russia or you're getting money from Saudi Arabia. So you're like a PEP, a politically exposed person. But now it can mean anything. It can mean like you're a hate speaker or some other shit like that. You know, like you're getting bribes or whatever. So they expanded the definition.
Mm-hmm. So he's also been to 7 banks, and everywhere the answer has been no. He has gotten no straight answer. He said that he was closed for commercial reasons, which is bullshit. Like a bank literally earns money by you having money in the bank. There is no commercial reason for a bank to say, please don't have your money in our bank. And yeah, no, that does sound an awful lot like good old-fashioned political persecution. Straight up. It's like, oh, we're going to make life difficult for you. We're not...
And it's not only that, like we're talking about a band that represented the interest of more than half of the nation.
Yep.
Like, this is what the left does, you know? They believe that without people like Farage, everyone would vote for Obama.
Yep.
Like, you know, like the default state of mankind is leftist ideology, but you have like these
Heresy
evil
is the
speakers
question.
that pop up
Fire
and
is
mind
the
control
answer.
and puppeteer the public. So if we get rid of these people, then people will become leftists again.
It is also just the good old-fashioned hypocrisy. Do this to a leftist politician, and there will be bloody murder. The bank will be burnt down in all due likelihood. But do this to a white man? It's just a thing that happens. Gabriel Natia says, about what V said, we went from the communist healthy origins, all relatives were poor and working class, to coming from a good family, which actually meant with higher education and well-to-do. ShadowFox2300 says, funny enough, most people still think that people that join the military are doing it because they can't get through college or make it in any other job. Yeah, because, again, it's a certain stigma against it. Midwest Finest says, you guys mentioned the Christian right having power 20 years ago. What happened? How did they lose power to the left? Oh, very, very slowly and very, very gradually.
The long march through academia, basically,
Yes.
it's called.
And it took like
voter
50, 60 years.
gerrymandering. Yeah. But basically, like, they started with the schools indoctrinating like a young generation into progressive ideology, making sure that once they got, you know, like they would keep their heads down, trying to get in positions of power. Underhanded tactics, like Arch talked about the Skullgirls controversy, where, oh, look, this developer got accused of rape, and even though it's not proven or we're not looking into it, we're fighting him anyway, and we're promoting the person that accused him, you know, like through that type of means.
Yep, absolutely. And it was also because Christianity was the establishment, and the establishment is always cringe. And so they used that against them. They were like, oh yeah, Christianity's pretty silly, ha 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 ha. What about the counterculture? Look at us, we're cool little Marxist. And then they got into power and they were like, all right, everybody shut up. Nobody laughs, nobody makes any jokes, and our political opposition can't have bank accounts. Because the point was always to be oppressive for them.
Yeah, it's also the problem that Christians have, and this is like what I noticed. When I want sexy women in games, like some of the people that are against it are like Jesus and family. The problem with the Jesus and family is that they want to censor everything, right? Like anything that they don't like, they censor. The left doesn't censor. The left co-ops. So like the left will co-opt something that they don't like Skullgirls, and then change it into something that promotes their values. Christians don't do that. Like Christians wouldn't co-op Diablo, like Blizzard Entertainment, and then create the video games from Blizzard to promote Christian ideology.
They kind of tried for a period. There exists a Christian clone of Wolfenstein 3D.
I have lost. Shit.
Does it?
Yes. But the thing is, the Christians didn't understand the game they were playing. And the left did. So the left created a brand new set of playing rules, and they swept the Christians from the field. And now they're in the process of hunting down and slaughtering the scattered remnants in whatever way they can.
I didn't know that.
Ars5 says, V, they will just import the food from Poor Peoplestan, even though they banned using gas there too. Yes.
Probably.
Smudgy says, thank you, Arch. Trucker here, people have no idea where food comes from. Oh, it's correct. It's unironically true.
Yeah.
Reality Backhand says, never be embarrassed about switching language mid-sentence. I did the exact same thing all the while I was living in Japan. Damn, that get offended about that. I can speak English so long as my brain is thinking in English, but the moment you introduce another language to me, it gets complicated.
That is literally it, because sometimes I'm being asked, it's like, why I speak with a Romanian, and they're like, oh, why do you speak English? And it's like, because I'm talking with 4 other people. Like, if I was to switch between English and Romanian, it would create, like, a lot of spelling errors, as well as, like, me mixing words and shit.
Mm-hmm. But I wanted to wrap up with one final thing that I thought was very, very funny on the diversity hiring thing, etc., and all of that nonsense. So there were, of course, dissenting opinions on the Supreme Court. And one of them, which I found to be great, was this one here. With the let them eat cake obliviousness today, the majority pulls the ripcord and announces colorblindness for all by legal fiat. But deeming a race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life. It does.
I mean, fucking hell. Like, okay, so if you don't ignore race in law, then you have a racist country, like, yes. Literally, right? Literally. And that wouldn't stop. Like you're the only reason that you're having this is that you're hoping that people do the quote unquote right thing, which is defined by your ideology.
Yeah.
But by the same thing, like a university can literally be taken over by Nazis, and then they can start discriminating based on Nazi ideology.
Yes.
And you would be like, oh my God, why is this happening? Well, because you allowed the legal system to do it.
Yes, because here's the thing, colorblindness is the solution. We used to have this. In the 2000s, racism was genuinely not a problem. And in the tiny areas where it was, we were in the process of solving it. And it was because nobody effing cared anymore. But now
it's kind of like left hand, right hand, right? Like when I grew up, people like the teacher would spank you if you were writing with your left hand. Like it was legitimately viewed as a bad thing. Now I bet the new generation doesn't even know about this controversy.
Yeah. It is how you make it normal, by making it normal. And guess what? By making colorblindness legal fiat, by making it law, that means that we are legally all the same. And it literally does make race irrelevant because it has no impact on the law anymore. Because as you say too, if you are of the opinion that you need to include race in law, you have a racist country by definition, because racism is codified in your legal system. It is ridiculous.
Yes.
And she goes on, the best that can be said of the majority's perspective is that it proceeds ostrich-like from the hope that preventing consideration of race will end racism. Preventing consideration of race will end racism. Yes. If nobody considers race, if nobody thinks about race, if race is not a criteria...
No. I'll tell you what they think, right? They think literally like the bigotry of low expectations. They genuinely think that black people can't succeed. And some of them even said it out loud.
Yes.
Right? So if you believe that that is the case, then you believe that without equity and without like racism, you will not have like black people succeeding, which is not true.
Yes.
Because you have Obama. Like, Obama didn't benefit from any of this shit, right? Like, he managed to become president. If he could do it, like, what's the justification for others not to be able to do it?
That is absolutely true. And I'm gonna show the example here that everyone's been... you've probably seen it too. Erica Marsh, the person who nobody can figure out if she's a parody account or not.
Mm.
So let me see if I can't get this over here. This one. Today's Supreme Court decision is a direct attack on black people. No black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system. This isn't me, YouTube. Which is exactly why affirmative action-based programs were needed. Today's decision is a travesty. No black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system.
This is literally what they believe.
It is.
And it's what they're telling black people. That's the biggest problem.
Yes.
Right? Like, imagine... You're a young black child, and this is what you're being told by your teacher and by the media and the powers that be. Is like, you can't succeed unless the Democrats help you.
Yes. Like, this is what they are saying. And people have been arguing whether or not this is a parody account or not. I doubt it. Because remember, you're supposed to mark your accounts with this stuff now. Plus, she has a consistent worldview. She's said specifically she isn't a parody account. I've seen other people claim that she is apparently an ex-Biden staffer, etc. If she's a parody, she's doing a damn fine job of it. I mean, she has 133,000 followers. That's a very successful parody account. Especially when nobody's figured out the joke yet.
Yeah.
And again, this is what they are saying. When you have the Chief Justice, or liberal justice, not Chief Justice, saying deeming a race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life, and saying preventing consideration of race will end racism, as if these are not true things, it's ridiculous. It is genuinely absurd. The only way this makes sense, the only way you could believe that not considering race will not end racism is if you think one race is inherently superior to the other. There is no other
explanation.
Yeah, like that is the only explanation you arrive at.
But even then, like, would it be racism? I mean, okay, so like, let's say I want to, and by the way, this is why the left hates standardized tests. Let's say I want some people to go in a warehouse and pick up stuff for me, right? So how do I decide which person is fit for the job? And I have like a standardized test. It's like, can you pick up this rock? Okay. So let's say that out of 10 people that show, only 3 are women, and none of the women can pick up the rock. The left will believe that I am a sexist, misogynistic pig for having that test in the first place and for not having enough women at my company. They hate standardized tests. When from my point of view, I just want to know that people can lift the weights. And they're not going to get into any accidents, and they're not going to injure themselves or others while they're picking up shit at the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
But the left comes in and they're like, no, you need to shrink the rock. You need to make the rock smaller so that the women can pick it. And you need to change your advertising so that you have like 5 women that show up at the company. And you need to have like 5 bathrooms for all the genders and that type of stuff.
Yep. Chad is correcting me. They're saying she was an Obama staffer. So yes. There you go. And again, it is the only answer, because if indeed, yes, you don't take race into consideration, if that is literally not a thing you consider, then there can't be racism. Like, literally. It's such a... Like, this woman's position is unfathomably ridiculous. Inherently so. And yet, I guarantee you she believes every word of it. And if you faced her, if you actually put her in a corner and went like, okay, so if nobody considers race is not a theme, it doesn't even exist in the minds of the people, how does racism still exist? She would probably not have an answer. She'd just be sitting there like, well, and if she splurted out the immediate response, it would be because some races would do better than others. Like, it is the actual white supremacist position. Or the Asian supremacist one, I guess.
I mean, they literally do think that Asians are the new whites.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know why I think that is? It's because when they talk about whiteness, they actually refer to capitalist meritocracy.
Yeah. There's another funny one. Roman Martinez, a former Roberts law clerk, said race and the subjugation of black and indigenous people especially are part of the legal underpinning of our society and persists today. Where in the US legal system does it say black people work on plantations? Where does it say Indians should be oppressed?
Well, the thing is, like, even if you were to have equality and like black people would be represented in 30% in all positions of power, they would still not be satisfied. They would still call America a racist country. I mean, look at fucking France. You know, like France opened its borders, allowed tens of millions of people inside, and it's still considered racist.
Yes, it's still a racist country.
Why would people why would Jewish people go to Nazi Germany? Does that make any sense? You know, and secondly, why would Nazi Germany allow massive numbers of Jews to go in and give them welfare and stuff? Like, it makes absolutely no sense.
Yep. And again, it is absolutely the case, because it is a tool for power. Like you say, France is a racist country. Well, we can see the Associated Press go, yes, France is a racist country. Like, the country has received more immigrants than probably anyone else. Its border has been flooded. It now has a place called the Jungle, which is where all of the immigrants hang out whilst they try to swim to England. The country is overrun and is drowning in constant riots, but it is still intolerant. It is still racist, and it still has a problem with police brutality.
Yes.
It's kind of an interesting question. Okay, how many riots, how many burnt cars, how many murders, how many injuries before the police have license to be brutal? How far do we have to go until people go, police brutality, good?
This is the interesting part, right? You can have, like, actual terrorist attacks. You can have, like, just unseen level of brutality and crime. And the morality is like, well, you can't blame the group. You know, it's just like a few bad apples. But the moment the police officer, just one police officer, does something bad, you get riots in London, even though it happened in a different nation. Which means that this is not about police brutality. It's simply about, like, criminals just wanting a reason. Like, you can't tell me that people who rob a store are doing it because of social justice. You know, or people who set fire to an elementary school are doing it because of social justice. Or someone that drives a truck into a business and then people just march in and steal stuff from there is because of... No, like, this is clearly two types of people that are doing it. Like, number one are the thugs that are profiteering. Number two are the communists. Like, you see actual communists on Twitter cheering, encouraging, participating, right? And it's interesting because communism isn't labeled as a hate group, even though clearly, like, when you look at what's happening in France, it is. Like, they completely hate the bourgeois. And sometimes they even hate, like, anyone that's not a communist.
Mm-hmm. Because again, it's a tool for power. That is the only thing it is the only thing it has ever been. And America, at least if the Supreme Court is any judge, is beginning to learn at least a little bit of this. So Americans, I hope you won't become France. That's a roundabout well wish, but hey. All right, let's get on to the super chats, and we'll begin wrapping up after our resident white supremacists have told us about how colorblindness is not the solution to racism.
Yeah, because it's 2.5 for me, so trying to keep myself awake.
The homosexual cat trap, also known as Kib, says, Barch, your Barchbox chat is broken. I know. I wanted it to be broken.
Service guarantees
Intended
citizenship.
for it to be broken. Wanted it to be. Actually, it wasn't broken. It was just using the old chat. Technically, it was fine. But thank you, Carl. Animate Acumen says, insert meme of somewhere there was a line and we passed it, but let's keep going and see what happens. Yep. Sandoom says, yes, Dev gone. I bonked him with Stick of Silence. Well, Dev occasionally pops in when the super chat happens and says that he's lost. That's good. Vulture 1066 says, Reform 94 screwed trade schools. I have heard about that. Hell, Norway is just a screwed up country at this point in general. We are just so obscenely rich we can still manage to scuttle through somehow. So John says, V, look up how Buddhism treats women. Ooh, V, are you simping for a misogynist religion?
Oh, come on. I mean, Christianity also has very conservative way of treating women compared to what is modern acceptable. Like, the idea that women need to cover their head before going to church and that they need to be submissive to their husband exists in Christianity as well.
I think Buddhism beats women. I think Buddhism ritualistically beats women.
Is that a thing?
I think so.
Anyway, let's go through the super chats because I'm...
Misogynist needs to sleep, chats. We must hurry.
Yes.
Locomosaurus Button says, fun fact, Rusty Cage built a guillotine on his channel. Completely random mention when you start talking about France. Vulture 1066 says, guns per capita in Norway is rather high. Good. So John says the French police union are saying that the foreigners are making it too difficult to do their job, and the military sent another threatening letter. They did. I did see that. The military sent another letter saying like 200 people had signed it or whatever, ex-generals and so on, that France was on the brink of a civil war. And I don't know. I don't think there is enough organized resistance in France for that. But it is certainly on the brink of something.
Yeah, I mean, the riot is uncontrolled. Like, there's no political leaders part of the riots. There's no... and not to mention, like, the reason they get away with it is because the state shows restraint.
Yes.
If the state was literally like about to collapse, and if that were to happen, then if they would unleash the military, the rioters wouldn't have a single chance.
Well, that's the thing. Like, the state might be so weak it will collapse without doing that. That's the thing. So it wouldn't be a civil war. But what would need to happen is for the right wing to get in power there and go, okay, crimes are criminal again in France, and we're going to punish people for committing them. Because that is the thing that isn't happening. When you've got people uploading social media videos of their crimes constantly to the point where that becomes a societal marker of status, your police isn't doing its job. Like, unironically, that is the point at which you go like, okay, this new bill will reinstitute public floggings. Krieg Guardsman 181 says, need some Mordian Iron Guards. I covered them once, didn't I? They sadly don't have that much lore, it's a bit tragic. Sandoom says, seeing this makes me want the police of the 1950s. And Vulture says, I miss the 80s and 90s. I can see that. Mark Ashamed, after the New York City parade, all I have to say is Bin Laden did nothing wrong. It's a bit much. So John says, Arch, have you considered doing a breakdown of Yuri Bezmenov's interview and how it shows exactly how collectivism is destroying Western society? I think enough people have done that because he's right. And he literally did give us their playbook. And the fact that we even now don't realize is much to our shame. John McCanna says, have a tip for the entertainment as I went for a 40-kilometer push bike ride up the local mountain. It actually took me less time to ride than to watch your show. Well, that's good for you. That means you're probably rather fit. Unless it was all just downhill, in which case you cheated. C.T. Thomas, the Beeps Peasant, says, calling any Western country racist is ridiculous, considering how these governments bend over backwards to sate these entitled perma children, but will never be appeased because they hate us all. Yeah. There is actually, unironically, an element of hatred involved as well, which is why there was a viral Twitter video going around recently where they were basically asking black people on the streets, in Britain, I think, can you be racist to white people? And all of them are like, nah, no, nope, nine.
You know what's interesting with this chain of thought? They will say, only white people can be racist. White supremacy is the worst form of racism. Black people can be white supremacists?
Yep. Like we have...
There are articles.
Oh yeah, like the recent Hispanic shooter, for example. Like, oh, he was a white supremacist.
Yes, but only white people can be racist, right? And well, it's interesting. Like none of their ideology has any sense of logic, which is why the AI literally just cannot understand it.
No, I made a video about that. Amazon bricked their own AI because they tried to force social justice on it because it doesn't work. Like
it doesn't understand it. But not only that, like Wikipedia, for example, the way it works is that everything you add needs to have a reference and it needs to be connected, right? Mm-hmm. So transgenderism doesn't work because it can't define what is a woman.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the entirety of leftism is based on the assumption and the acceptance that nothing needs to make sense. There are no rules, there's only what gains you politically. And a lot of people, tragically, are too stupid, literally too stupid, to understand that. That is why you get a judge, liberal justice, a goddamn judge. I don't even know how many years of education that is, sitting there going, if nobody ever considered racism, that would actually cause more racism. It is as they say, it is a statement so stupid you would have to have gone to university to be able to say it. But right, okay. We will wrap it up there because it is late for poor little V. And I would like to have a snack before the Barotrauma stream as well. So thank you all very much for watching and for managing to stick with us through 2 separate streams today. And as always, of course, for your super generous donations. One last one. Lord Becomes a Spartan says, the entirety of leftism is based. Someone clip that. You fecked with that pause, Barchman, lol. Disgusting.
Service guarantee.
Leftism cannot be based by definition. And
actual old communists did have like our Marx, the workers must not be disarmed under any circumstance. That was kind of based.
Yes, but then he also said until communism wins, and then we need to take their guns away.
Really? Did he say that?
Yes. It was all about arming the workers until the revolution was finished, and then then arms needed to be kept under control again.
I see. Kind of like COVID, it's like while the riots happen, go out. Like people need to go out to not frustrate them, and then after it's like back inside.
Yep, back inside. Right. Until next time, have a good day, everyone.
Meow.